Hello again, I'm Doug Smith. Welcome to the 8 March 2019 edition of Portsmouth This Week. Our special guest today is Town Planner Gary Crosby, and we're going to be talking about the comprehensive plan and what the next steps are going to be. Welcome back to the show, Gary.
Thank you.
I know you've been working on this
Always a pleasure.
Town Comprehensive Community Plan, also known as the Comm Plan, for a couple of years now, and are getting ready for the next phase of getting it approved by the town and submitted to the state. Before we get into details about the plan itself, I wonder if you could tell us what is the Comm Plan and why do we need it, and why is it important to the town?
Well, I want to thank you for having me. I want to start out by reading a short paragraph which I think states better than I can what this is all about. This comes from guidance that is given to me by statewide planning on on how the plans ought to be put together. It says, a comprehensive plan sets forth a vision for the community, a glimpse of what the community aspires to be in 20 or more years, and lays out a specific path that, if followed, will achieve that vision. Without a vision for the future, the community can develop without foresight, without purpose, without consideration of all the aspects that are essential to maintaining a high quality of life for residents. Without a detailed roadmap for achieving the vision, community decision makers may not know how to make progress towards the end and the end state that is desired by the community. So it's a shared vision. One of the questions that you asked me to address as we were preparing for this is, why is public involvement so important? It is absolutely essential. If we're setting out a vision for the community, it's a shared vision. It's essential that we have community involvement for establishing this shared vision. This is not my vision. This is not the planning board's vision. This is not the any individual town council's vision. It is a shared vision for all. And so what the comprehensive plan does is it sets out this vision and steps that we can take to achieve that vision over time. The comprehensive plans fit into a much larger framework in Rhode Island, a framework known as reciprocal community planning. In 1988, we were one of the first states to put this in place, this idea of reciprocal planning. And that is that the state sets out broad goals and policies in their state guide plans, and then municipalities develop comprehensive plans that are in alignment with those state goals, but are relevant to our own community. We're not just following lockstep with state goals, but we need to be in alignment with state goals.
And the state goals kind of tell you the general areas you want to go in on.
Yes, they talk about in general areas. They talk about planning statewide, and then we are a small component of that. Right. And one of the things that's most important about that is that the local comprehensive plans are reviewed by the state and approved by the state. And once that's done, once they approve our comprehensive plan, it binds state agencies such as DEM or DOT or whatever to require them to be in conformance with our comprehensive plan if they want to come in and do things in our town. So that's absolutely critical, that we have a comprehensive plan approved by the state, so that we're all in agreement on, or in alignment on, what should happen in the community. So these plans need to be revised and updated and reapproved every 10 years so that they're current, and so that statewide planning knows what we're doing and we know what they're doing.
Yeah. So it sounds like a very important document, because it basically says, this is who we are and this is where we're going, which is the key part here.
Yeah, I always like to refer plans as guides to future action.
Yeah.
That they are They are, that it's a guide for not just planners and public officials, but citizens, developers, municipal department leaders, and so forth. And it works in two ways. If, as I said earlier, if we have a comprehensive plan in place that is showing us a path forward and showing us a vision and how we ought to accomplish that, if a town council comes up against or a planning board comes up against an unforeseen issue that they need to be able to make decisions about, rather than being haphazard about those decisions, they refer back to the comprehensive plan and the goals and policies in there to help them decide that. And the second thing is when a developer comes into a planning board or a zoning board for a special use permit or some sort of permitting that's necessary, oftentimes they will have to demonstrate that their project is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. So they can go into the comprehensive plan and say, see, my project is in compliance with the plan because it says right here, this policy is to do such and such and such, and that's how they support, how our project is supported. So we see that often in planning board and zoning board meetings.
Yeah.
It's a requirement that they demonstrate that compliance.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the process of developing it. Like, I know you've been working on this for years, and the last comp plan that we had was when?
It was originally written in 1992, and the last update that we did to it was or the last amendment that we did to it was in 2002.
Okay.
So it's
due. We're overdue.
We're way overdue. Yeah.
So what has been the process so far on trying to do this?
Well, I had like you said, and I have been working on this on the comp plan for several years now. One of the first things that I did was to go through and deconstruct the old plan and see if and one of the problems with the old plan, and one of the reasons why they need to be updated so often is periodically, is that there's guidance, there's guidelines. They have to be constructed a certain way, and our old plan was pre the kind of guidance that I'm looking at now, so it doesn't fit very nicely into the boxes that I have to.
Okay, so, and you're talking about guidance in terms of formatting and the way, the
content,
subject matter,
right,
and
that's correct. So I have been. I went to the planning board early on, and they agreed that the planning board is the agency which is responsible for creating the comprehensive plan. It's not me. It's the planning board. But we agreed that I would be the one to put words on paper to begin with, to get some content there that could then be discussed and commented on, and basically get stuff on paper for people to discuss. So I've been working on that for 2 solid years now. For the last year, the planning board has been holding monthly workshops. And let me say this, that I'm essentially finished with that process now. We have drafts of all 12 elements of the comprehensive plan. They're up on the website now for people to read and comment on. If you go, I'm told we're going to probably change this, but if you go onto the town website, scroll all the way down to the very bottom, in the bottom left-hand corner is a link to the comprehensive plan, and if you click on that, you'll see these new drafts. So they're all there. There's some holes still in them that we have to produce a good deal of the mapping that's a necessary requirement, and there's some holes that I have to fill before they're entirely finished, some things that we need to go back and check on and flesh out. But for the most part, it's essentially done. And we have been holding monthly workshops on each of the, one each for each of the elements. They've been overlapping somewhat because I've been slow in producing content, but the planning board has been holding these workshops, and there interested parties have been coming in and commenting on the content, and the planning board has been discussing things and changing things around and so forth. So we've arrived at the drafts, the final drafts that are up on the website now for people to comment. We have been sending, as they're finished, we've been sending drafts of individual elements up to statewide planning for them to give some preliminary comments. The more that they see sooner rather than later,
Right.
cuts down on the time that they have at the very end for their approval process. And so we have gotten back favorable comments from them on everything that we've sent. Obviously, they say we can't fully sign off on this yet because we need to see the whole plan and how any individual element fits into that whole
Yeah.
plan. So they're reserving judgment there, but for the most part, they're very favorable comments. Now, the next thing that is going to happen, we're done with these drafts now, and the next step is for the planning board to hold official public hearings on the draft. We're going to have a workshop coming up April 3rd at 7 p.m. One of the reasons why I'm here is to promote this workshop. April 3rd at 7 p.m. at the Portsmouth Middle School in the auditorium there, and we're going to essentially introduce. See, the thing from my perspective, the public comment period really is starting now. Is going forward with the planning board.
Right.
As I've said, it's been my job to get stuff on paper and get it out there. But the real public comment period starts now with the planning board and then ultimately with the town council. So we want to have a workshop now that I'm essentially done. We were going to have a public workshop to present what we have, the drafts that we have so far, to the public, and to generate interest and get people to be looking at the material and get ready to, if they so desire, to make comment to the planning board at the public hearings coming up. Those will probably be in late May, early June. Probably.
Okay.
The planning board hasn't quite decided because of the amount of content, how many meetings they're going to have.
Yeah.
But
Okay, but it'll be several probably.
yeah, it probably will be several. That's right. So once the planning board has these public hearings and signs off on it, the completed draft goes up to statewide planning. They have, depending upon how much they've seen of it already, they have up to 120 days to comment on it, shop it around to all the state agencies, shop it around to our adjoining communities, municipalities around us for comment. Then it comes back to us. They come back to us with comments and so forth. We adjust accordingly. Then it goes to the town council for public hearing, and ultimately the town council adopts the plan, incorporating it as an ordinance. Then it goes back to statewide planning for that same comment period again, in case things have changed and so forth. And then ultimately they sign off on it, approve it, and then we're good to go for 10 years.
Yeah, wow. So there's a lot of opportunity for public input. I guess my question is, at these workshops, what's going to happen? Is it like a presentation kind of?
Well, this initial workshop is going to be, one of the things that I think that is very important, as we talked about earlier, is this idea of a shared vision. And that shared vision is really expressed in the goals and policies for each element.
Okay.
What we're going to do is there'll be some opening remarks by me, and the consultant that we've hired that's helping us with this is going to make a presentation essentially talking about the same things that I'm talking about now. And then we're going to have basically a poster session where we're going to put the goals and the policies for each element up on posters, and they'll be stationed around the room,
Yeah.
so that people can see and comment on those. Hopefully there'll be enough of us to be able to speak knowledgeably. I'll be running around, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
to introduce the goals and policies of the plan to the public, and with the idea that if and again, one of the things that I find is what I think is the most important aspect of the plan is these policy statements. They basically say how we think we want to be, what we are, our vision. So a typical policy statement might be, it is the policy of the town of Portsmouth, that's the preface for each one of these statements, is to promote opportunities to integrate affordable housing into existing neighborhoods. So if you and these you'll be introduced to these. If you agree with that, that's terrific. If you don't, if you think that that's not an important aspect of describing how the vision of Portsmouth, I'm sure that the planning board and the town council would like to hear from you about that. So the idea here is to, the comprehensive plan is, the way it's constructed, each element is constructed with what I call front matter, which is basically an inventory, like let's take recreation for example. It's an inventory of all the recreational facilities in Portsmouth, public and private. Then there'll be some discussion about how there may be neighborhoods that there are, a needs analysis basically, and then the heart of the matter then is the second section of each element, which is the goals, the policies to achieve those goals, and then a set of implementation items to implement those policies. So, as we said earlier, it's kind of the comprehensive plan is kind of a step-by-step process for achieving our vision,
Okay.
and it's done by that. But it's more importantly, I think, and one of the things that I've been really trying to stress is that rather than us concentrating on these individual steps that we have to take over the next 10 years or 20 years to achieve these, to implement these policies, is the policies themselves. What do they say about us? And so that's what we want to try and introduce at this workshop and get people to begin to comment on. And of course to generate interest in having people come to the planning board public hearings when they take place.
Now this workshop sounds like the one we did for the Mount Hope Park.
Yes, exactly.
Kind
And
of organized like that. And
as a matter of fact, the very same people that did the workshop for Mount Hope Park is doing this one
Okay,
for us.
well, they did a good job, I think.
Yeah, I was delighted to hear. We hired a consultant to help me with putting these individual drafts together.
Okay.
And they in turn hired a sub-consultant to help them, and that sub was the people, is Horsley Witten, who did the Mount Hope Park
Yeah.
stuff.
So essentially, people are, they're put in groups and they move around to these different things. They express their concerns or something on
Yes.
each one. what happens at the end of one of these workshops? I mean, there's no up or down vote or anything, right?
No, no, no. It will be there will be a Q&A session after that, and then there will be an opportunity for people to comment on cards and so forth, and we'll take all of that information and feed it back to the planning board so that they can make whatever adjustments they see fit in preparation for holding those public workshops.
Okay.
And our hope is that the same people that are expressing these concerns, we don't want to be making unilateral decisions about what should or should not be in the plan.
Yeah.
That'll be hopefully expressed and commented on at the public hearing. So we're hoping that the same people who come to the workshops and that have concerns or comments about any particular policy statement or goal will again come to the public workshops.
Okay, now
public hearing.
The subsequent workshops after the first one,
Right.
and the rest of them, for that matter, does the planning board take those and maybe incorporate some changes they think are
Yes.
significant, and then the next one is briefed?
Well, we're going to have this one single workshop in order to try and generate interest to
Okay,
have
and that's
people.
mainly in the goals and,
That's correct.
yeah.
Then the planning board will hold their public hearings, and depending upon the comments and so forth that are expressed at the public hearings, then they will adjust accordingly, and then that final adjusted plan goes to statewide planning for
Okay.
for their.
And that's basically for their
comment.
comment, but it comes back again
Yeah,
for a final
that's correct.
town council vote.
That's correct. Oh, yeah, that's the most important part, is the town
Yeah.
council will then hold public hearings themselves and take comment and sort of, and suggest or approve or suggest adjustments to the language, and then it goes back to statewide planning
Yeah.
again.
It sounds complicated.
Well, I mean,
It is.
the whole
It's a complex plan.
It is, and again, it's this idea of shared vision, that all of these conversations and workshops and hearings and so forth are necessary in order to craft that shared vision. And the more input we have, the better it will be.
Yeah, and
Like I said, it's not my vision; it's
a town vision.
all of our vision. That's right.
We are kind of contentious in Portsmouth sometimes, and I hope it
You
doesn't.
think?
I hope it doesn't work out like that here. But I think it's important that people take a look at this plan, go online, go to the town website, find the plan. There's so much to it. I mean, there are 12 sections of the plan to
That's
begin
right.
with,
Yep.
and each one is a tome, just about.
Yes.
But people really need to do this, and when I went into there are a couple I'm particularly interested in, and I noticed that there were some holes,
Yeah.
like maps or
Yep,
stuff
yep,
like that.
yep.
How will those get filled in?
That's on me.
Okay, so it's over time, those will,
Yeah, and I have to get those done before the planning board has said these got to be all buttoned down tight before we're going to
Yeah.
hold public hearings, and so
Okay.
I've been busy with.
well, I
with
think
that.
the interesting thing, though, is about those to be provided
Mm-hmm.
parts, is that'll give people an idea if they have some thoughts on these
Right.
things for their input.
Yeah. Well, I think that the important thing to say about this, though, is that most of the holes that I've identified need to be fleshed out, need to be finished as required as required content by the state, are in the front, what I call the front matter. I have to write a couple of paragraphs about the quality of soils in Portsmouth and
Yeah.
how they fit into our
Okay, so that's
so
that's prior to the
yeah,
goals.
there is not a word in the goals, policies, or implementation items that are not
Okay,
finished.
all that is completed.
That's done,
Okay.
and it's been vetted by the planning board. That's all there.
Okay.
So now what we're looking for, particularly with this new workshop, is to look at that stuff, not necessarily the text in the beginning of each element, because that's really just inventory stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean when I say I got holes that I have to fill.
Yeah, well,
I just didn't want to stop the process and go back and spend a week writing a paragraph on the quality of soils in Portsmouth when it was far more important for me to work on policies and goals. See, that's one of the things that hiring a consultant, we've been urged, and the council has approved funds to hire a consultant to help us with this. But a consultant can do an awful lot of that work of the inventory and the preliminary stuff, particularly in elements like housing or services and facilities where it's just data. But a consultant isn't, and this is one of the reasons why I have kept the goals and policies and implementation items piece of it so closely held by me, is that a consultant is, how are they going to be able to develop policies that express our shared vision without asking me, you know?
Yeah,
so I've held that very close, and that's been the focus of my work.
Now, there is a section in the current plan that says, I've got a copy here, which is the draft goals. So I would think this would be an important thing for people to take a look at.
Well, that's right.
That's what you're going to be focusing on.
If you go up onto the website and the area where it shows the final drafts, there are the 12 final elements that are there, but there's also 2 documents that are there, which is a compilation of all of the goals from all of the elements all put together in one sheet, and a compilation or a summary of all of the policies.
Okay.
And there's 57 of them. So and to me, reading through that document that's where the vision is expressed.
Yeah.
And I was quite gratified to see, as I did that, I was quite gratified to see how I was worried that and one of the things that statewide planning wants to know about is how do these all communicate with each other? How do they all fit together with each other? And as I was reading the policy statements that had all been sort of put together in silos, when it started coming together, I was quite gratified to see that
they fit.
They talk about each other.
Okay.
Yeah,
so those 2 sections, I think, are particularly important.
Absolutely.
For people to take a look at
Absolutely.
Before this thing. Now, we're almost out of time, as usual, when we get together. You have any key points you want to tell people about what's coming up?
Well, I think that it is, if people want to participate, they have an opportunity here. Come to the workshop, be introduced to what the material that we have, and know that the planning board is more than eager to hear their comments, and then to go online and look at the material and see what you think. Be engaged. Come one, come all.
Because
that's
this is something that's going to affect our town going forward for
Yes.
a long time.
Absolutely.
Gary, thanks so much for coming on board today.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us. I'm Doug Smith, your host, signing off. We'll see you in the next edition of Portsmouth This Week. Thank you.